There is a month, somewhere in the middle of building a dividend portfolio, when the payments stop being a number on a screen and start buying your actual food. Here is where that month arrives. About $138,000 if you are a single man in your 50s eating the way the Department of Agriculture calls moderate. 138,000. That is not a retirement number, and it is not $1 million. A lot of people watching this have already passed it and have no idea they did. Now, the honest part, that figure is built on a grocery bill that is almost certainly not yours, and when you swap in the right one, the number moves, in both directions, by more than $50,000. There is also something happening to that grocery bill over the next 10 years that changes what crossing this line even means, and it is the reason I made this video rather than just posting the number. Hal and Roy will turn up in a few minutes. Both 54, both with the same portfolio, both with the same grocery bill, both crossing this line in the same month. 10 years later, one of them is buying his groceries and his electricity. The other is still buying groceries, and only just. Before any of that, where the grocery number comes from, because almost nobody knows this data exists. Every single month, the United States Department of Agriculture publishes what it costs to feed a person at home. Not an estimate from a blog. A formal federal report, updated monthly, broken down by age, by sex, and by 4 spending levels. The most recent one uses May 2026 prices and was issued in June. For a man aged 51 to 70, the moderate cost plan is $86.40 a week. That is $374.20 a month, or $4,490.40 a year. The thrifty end of the same table, the low-cost plan, is $298 a month. The liberal plan is $448.10. So the arithmetic is as simple as arithmetic gets. Take your annual grocery spend and divide it by your dividend yield. That is the portfolio. At 3.25%, which is the 30-day SEC yield on the Schwab U.S. Dividend Equity ETF, ticker SCHD, as of August 6, 2026, straight from Schwab, here is the whole range. The low-cost plan needs $110,000. The moderate plan needs $138,000, the liberal plan needs $165,000, and a couple, both aged 51 to 70 on the moderate plan, needs about $286,000 because the USDA tells you to add 10% for a 2-person household rather than simply doubling. If you would rather run your own grocery number through it than use the government's, the free calculator in the description does it. Keep one thing in mind while we go on, because I am coming back for it. Every number I just gave you assumes the grocery bill sits still. It does not, and the direction it moves is not the one you are expecting. Now, the USDA plans are model diets. They describe what it costs to eat a nutritionally adequate diet at 4 different spending levels, which is useful and is not the same thing as what people actually spend. For that, the Bureau of Labor Statistics runs the Consumer Expenditure Survey, and it asks households what they really bought. For calendar year 2024, a household headed by someone aged 55 to 64 spent $6,174 on food at home. That is $514.50 a month, and it is real reported spending rather than a plan. $6,174 a year divided by 3.25% is $189,969. That is the number I would actually put on the wall. $190,000, near enough. For a household your age eating the way households your age eat. Not a model. Not a plan. What people in your bracket told a federal surveyor they spent. And if you want the version that includes restaurants, that same age group spent another $4,040 eating out, which takes total food to $10,214 a year and the portfolio to about $314,000. Which brings me to Hal and Roy, because knowing when you cross this line matters a great deal less than what you do in the month you cross it. Hal and Roy. Both 54, both with $190,000 in dividend payers, both spending about $514 a month on groceries. They cross the line in the same month, identical in every way a spreadsheet can see. Hal changes nothing. The dividends keep buying more shares, the companies keep raising their payments, and he keeps paying for groceries out of his paycheck the way he always has. Roy does the thing the milestone invites you to do. He turns off reinvestment and lets the dividends pay for the groceries. It is the whole point of the exercise. It is the reason he built the portfolio. And honestly, it feels wonderful. Before I tell you where they are in 10 years, notice what Roy actually did, because it is the more emotionally sensible of the two choices, and almost nobody describes the cost of it. 10 years on, Hal's dividend income has grown from about $6,200 a year to somewhere north of $13,000 from reinvestment and dividend growth together, without him adding a dollar. His groceries are covered roughly twice over. He could pay for his food and his power bill out of it. Roy's income has grown too, but only from the companies raising their payments because his share count stopped increasing the day he turned off reinvestment. He is at maybe $9,000 a year. His grocery bill, meanwhile, did not sit still either. I want to be careful here because Roy did not make a mistake. He is 54. He built the thing. And eating food he did not have to work for is a completely legitimate use of it. What Roy did was convert a growing asset into a fixed one at the exact moment it started working. That is a real trade, and for someone who needs the money, it is the right trade. It is just not the neutral, obvious, celebratory decision the milestone makes it feel like. Which raises the obvious objection. What if $190,000 is nowhere near where you are? Because I said at the start there was something about that grocery bill I was coming back to, and this is it. The bill is moving, and it happens to be moving toward you rather than away from you. Go back to the same Bureau of Labor Statistics survey. Households headed by someone aged 45 to 54 spend $7,703 a year on food at home. 55 to 64 spend $6,174. 65 and over spend $5,251. Read those in order. Between your late 40s and your late 60s, real reported grocery spending falls by about 32%. Not because food got cheaper, because it did not. Because the households get smaller, children leave, appetites change, and 2 people stop cooking for 4. So the portfolio you need does not stand still waiting for you to reach it. At 45 to 54 spending, the line sits at about $237,000. At 65 plus spending, the same line sits at about $162,000. $75,000 of the gap closes itself and you do not have to save a penny of it. There's a third route, and it is the one people find most uncomfortable. You can move the line by moving down the USDA table. The difference between the liberal plan and the low-cost plan is $150 a month, which is about $55,000 of portfolio. That is a genuine option, and I'm not going to pretend it is a pleasant one, because telling a 54-year-old man to eat more cheaply so his dividends catch up is not advice. It is just arithmetic. But it belongs on the list because it is the only lever on this list that works immediately. Now the part I have been building toward, and it is what actually happens in the month you cross. Nothing happens, and that is the honest answer. There is no email and nobody tells you. The dividend hits the account in the same unremarkable way it hit last quarter, and if you were not watching for it, you would miss it entirely. And the reason that matters is what the bill is doing underneath you. The Food at Home Index published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics stood at 243.110 in January 2020. In June of this year, it stood at 321.631. That is a rise of 32.3% in 6.5 years. A $100 cart in January 2020 is about $132 today. There is one piece of good news buried in that, and I will give it to you because it cuts the other way. The Economic Research Service at the USDA publishes a food price forecast, and its July 24th update puts food at home inflation for this year at 2.7%, inside a range of 1.6 to 3.9. The 20-year average is 2.6, so after several years of running well above trend, grocery inflation is back roughly where it historically sits. The Bureau of Labor Statistics data agrees. Food at home rose 2.7% over the 12 months to June, against overall inflation of 3.5%. Groceries are currently rising more slowly than almost everything else you buy. That matters because it means the target in this video is not sprinting away from you the way it was in 2022. It is walking, and you are walking faster, which is the whole thing, so let me say it as plainly as I can. Crossing this line is not what matters. Staying across it is. Reaching the number once is arithmetic, and you can do it with a lump sum. Staying above a bill that has risen 32% in 6 years requires income that grows, and only one of the 2 men in this video still has that. Hal and Roy crossed in the same month. Hal's income grew about 8% a year afterwards, and Roy's grew about 3%, and neither of them noticed the difference for the first 2 years. By year 10, the gap was $4,000 a year, on a decision that took Roy about 90 seconds to make and felt like a reward. So here's what you own now. The USDA monthly food plans, which price your exact demographic and which you can look up tonight. The formula, your annual food spend divided by your yield. 3 real answers, about $110,000 at the low-cost plan, about $190,000 at what your age group actually spends, about $286,000 for a couple. The fall in grocery spending after 55, which closes part of the gap without you doing anything, and the 32%, which is why the growth matters more than the crossing. Roy is fine. He eats well, he built something real, and he gets to enjoy it a decade before most people would. Hal just kept his hands off it for 10 more years and ended up with a machine that outruns his grocery bill instead of one that matches it. Tell me where you actually are and be specific so the comments are useful. First, look up your real grocery spend rather than guessing it, because almost everyone guesses low, and tell me what portfolio it implies at your yield. Second, if you have already crossed, did you turn off reinvestment or leave it running? And third, if you are not there yet, how much of the gap do you think closes by itself as your household gets smaller? Put it below, because the answers down there are usually better than mine. If $190,000 sounds a long way off from where you are standing, the more useful question is how you build the first $500 a month from nothing, and how to build $500 a month in dividends. Starting with zero walks through exactly that. None of this is financial advice. It is published data from the Department of Agriculture and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, divided by a yield I named and dated, with every source on screen so you can go and check it. Here is the math. You decide.